A mosquito can find you from 100 feet away. She tracks your breath, your sweat, your body heat, and the carbon dioxide trail you leave behind every time you exhale. She does not need the wind to be in her favor. She does not need the light. She needs about 30 seconds of still air and a bare ankle. A $400 wall of mosquito plants from the garden center will not stop her. Most of the plants sold as mosquito-repellent do almost nothing as living plants. They smell pleasant. They look attractive. They sit in pots beside the patio, while the mosquitoes fly straight past. The garden center tag claims one thing. The peer-reviewed research says another. But some plants genuinely work. A few of them work better than DEET in a laboratory, and one of them is the only plant the United States Centers for Disease Control formally endorses as a mosquito repellent. This video covers 15 plants, ranked from the strongest evidence to the weakest. I will tell you which ones are decoration, which ones are weapons, and how to use each. We start at the top with the only plant the CDC formally endorses. 2 slots later, you meet the herb Roman armies burned in their tent fires for 2,000 years. By the end, you will know which plant your local garden center is still selling on a marketing claim that was disproven in 1996. Subscribe before we start. Number 1. Lemon eucalyptus. This is the only plant on this list the United States Centers for Disease Control formally recommends as a mosquito repellent. In 2008, the CDC added oil of lemon eucalyptus to its list of repellents, proven to prevent mosquito-borne illness, including West Nile virus and Zika. Trials at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine had already shown that the oil, at 30% concentration, provides protection comparable to low-concentration DEET. The active compound is PMD, formed during the natural distillation of eucalyptus oil. No other plant on this list has institutional endorsement at this level. The plant is Corymbia citriodora, a tall eucalyptus native to Queensland, first formally described by the English botanist William Jackson Hooker in 1848 from specimens collected in the Brisbane River Valley. Indigenous Australians had used the leaves for centuries before European contact, both as antiseptic and as insect repellent. In temperate gardens, it grows 5 to 15 feet, often in large containers brought indoors for winter in zones below 8. Here is the honest deployment. The passive effect from the plant in a pot is modest. The real effect comes from crushing the leaves. Rub the fresh oil on exposed forearms and ankles before you sit down outside, and you have 45 minutes to 2 hours of genuine repellent protection. The plant beside your chair gives a small local zone. Move 10 feet away and the mosquitoes return. I keep a container by the back deck for exactly this reason. In July, the air around the chair smells faintly of lemon and the mosquitoes stay off. Think of it as the only plant on this list with a CDC endorsement. The most reliable plants in a garden are the ones the science has finally caught up with. Number 2. Catnip. This plant beat DEET by a factor of 10 in a controlled laboratory study. In 2001, Dr. Chris Peterson and Dr. Joel Coates at Iowa State University presented research at the American Chemical Society National Meeting showing that nepetalactone, the active compound in catnip, was approximately 10 times more effective at repelling Aedes aegypti mosquitoes than DEET. The result made international headlines. Subsequent field trials confirmed the effect. Here is the honest caveat. The Iowa State study used concentrated nepetalactone extract, not catnip leaves. The plant in your garden produces the compound at lower concentration. Crushing a handful of fresh leaves and rubbing them on exposed skin gives you 1 to 2 hours of significant protection in published field trials. The plant in a pot, untouched, does much less. Nepeta cataria has been grown in European herb gardens since at least the medieval period. It appears in the Capitulare de Villis, the estate decree issued by Charlemagne in 795, and in herbals throughout the Middle Ages. The plant has been quietly outperforming DEET since long before DEET existed. Nobody bothered to study it until 2001. One warning: if you have outdoor cats, or neighboring outdoor cats, plant catnip in containers. The same compound that repels mosquitoes attracts cats. Expect visitors. Think of it as the plant that beat DEET in a fair fight. The most surprising plants in a garden are usually the ones nobody bothered to study until recently. Catnip was hiding in plain sight for 1,000 years. Number 3. Rosemary. Roman armies burned this herb in their tent fires on summer evenings to keep biting insects out of camp. Pliny the Elder documented the practice in Naturalis Historia in the 1st century. The Roman legions stationed across the empire, from Hadrian's Wall in Britain to the desert garrisons of North Africa, carried dried rosemary in their kit specifically to throw on the fire after sundown. 2,000 years later, rosemary smoke is still one of the most reliable ways to clear a backyard of mosquitoes. The science underneath is simple. Rosemary contains 1,8-cineol, camphor, and alpha-pinene. When the herb burns, those compounds vaporize into a smoke plume that carries 5 to 12 meters downwind in still air. Multiple peer-reviewed studies confirm that rosemary smoke significantly reduces mosquito landings within the smoke zone. The plant in a pot does very little. The plant on the fire does almost everything. Here is the deployment. Throw 2 or 3 fresh sprigs onto the coals of any outdoor fire. Within 3 minutes, the smoke clears the seating area. The smell is incredible, like a high-end restaurant where someone is grilling lamb in the next room. I do this at every fire pit gathering. 3 sprigs, every time. Guests always ask what the smell is. I never tell them. Think of it as the Roman army's portable mosquito barrier. The oldest tricks in the garden are usually the ones that still work. 2,000 years of legionary evenings cannot all be wrong. Number 4. Sage. Indigenous peoples across the plains and the American Southwest have burned white sage for thousands of years. The smoke is sacred in Lakota, Cheyenne, and Diné ceremonial practice. It is also one of the most effective natural mosquito deterrents ever documented. Modern entomological studies have measured the mosquito clearing effect of burning sage smoke and found it stronger than rosemary in still air. The 1,000-year-old tradition was always practical as well as spiritual. Common garden sage, Salvia officinalis, is the European cousin. The Latin name comes from salvare, meaning to be saved or to heal. Charlemagne required it across the Frankish Empire in the Capitulare de Villis in 795. It has been a fixture of European herb gardens since the early medieval period. The smoke from burning sage contains thujone, camphor, and 1,8-cineol, the same compound family that makes rosemary effective, but with a different aromatic profile. Earthier, heavier, longer lasting in still air. Here is the deployment. Dried sage bundles burn slower and steadier than fresh rosemary. A bundle the size of a fist will smolder for 40 minutes and clear mosquitoes from a backyard within 5. Tie sage cuttings into bundles in late summer. Hang them in a dry place through autumn, and you have a season's worth of bug-free evenings ready to go. Think of it as a 1,000-year-old technology that still works. The plants that survive in human gardens for 2,000 years are usually the ones that paid their way. Sage has earned its keep on 3 continents, and counting. Number 5. Pennyroyal Roman legionaries stuffed this plant into their bedding on summer campaigns to keep fleas and biting insects out of their tents. The Latin name Pulegium comes from pulex, the word for flea. Pliny the Elder documented the practice in Naturalis Historia in the 1st century. Pennyroyal has been used as an insect repellent in Mediterranean gardens for over 2,000 years. The active compound is pulegone. It belongs to the mint family chemistry, but at higher concentration than the menthol in peppermint or spearmint. Brushing against pennyroyal in a path or stepping on a low-growing planting releases the oil into the air and onto your skin in a single motion. It is one of the few plants on this list where casual contact is enough to do real work. Here is the honest warning. Because it matters. Pennyroyal essential oil in concentrated form is toxic. It can cause liver damage at high doses and is dangerous for pregnant women, young children, and pets. As a garden plant brushed against in passing, it is safe. As an oil applied to skin in concentration or taken internally, it is not. Plant it where you walk past it. Do not extract it. Use Mentha pelagium as a low ground cover between stepping stones, along the edges of pathways, and around the perimeter of seating areas. Every step releases a small burst of oil. Think of it as a Roman insect repellent technology you can plant between your stepping stones. The most powerful plants in a garden are usually the ones that demand the most respect. Number 6. Citronella grass. This is the actual plant the candles are made from. Cymbopogon nardus is a tall ornamental grass native to Sri Lanka and Indonesia. It can reach 4 to 6 feet in a single season and produces the citronella oil used in commercial candles, sprays, and torches since the early 1800s. The species was first formally identified by the German botanist Wilhelm Hofmeister in 1856. By the late 19th century, Sri Lankan distillers were exporting citronella oil to Europe and North America in industrial quantities. Here is the honest distinction. The candles work somewhat when you sit directly downwind in still air. The plant itself, untouched in a clump beside the patio, does very little. The oil is locked inside the leaves and does not release in useful volume on its own. What does work is contact. Crush a few leaves between your palms before sitting down outside, and the oil release is immediate and intense. Rub it on your forearms and you have a real topical repellent for 30 to 60 minutes. Throw cut leaves on a fire pit, and the smoke clears the area within 5 minutes. Plant it in zones 9 through 11 as a perennial. Cooler zones, grow it in a large container and bring it indoors before the first frost. Think of it as the source plant for an oil that works, and a living plant that works half as well. The plants that became products are usually the ones that work hardest when you remember they were plants first. Number 7. Basil. Basil has the strongest evidence of any passive plant on this list. It is the only common garden herb that releases mosquito-repellent oils continuously through the leaves without being crushed. The volatile compounds, eugenol and linalool and estragol, vaporize off the foliage in the heat of the afternoon and create a low-level repellent zone in the immediate air around the plant. Field trials have documented the effect at distances of 1 to 3 feet from a healthy plant. There is a second use that almost nobody talks about. Basil oil applied to standing water kills mosquito larvae. Studies in Egypt and Thailand have shown ovicidal effects on Aedes and Culex eggs, the two genera responsible for most mosquito-borne disease worldwide. If you have any standing water near your garden, a basil plant beside it is doing real work. Ocimum basilicum originated in India and reached the Mediterranean via Persian trade routes around the 4th century before Christ. The genus name comes from the Greek basileus, meaning king, because basil was used in ancient Greek royal anointing rituals. The cultivar that works hardest is holy basil, Ocimum tenuiflorum, called tulsi in India. It has been used as a household insect repellent in South and Southeast Asia for centuries. The oil profile is more concentrated than common sweet basil. Planted in pots beside every seating area. Think of it as a plant that protects you, feeds you, and asks nothing in return. The best plants in a garden work 3 jobs and never complain about any of them. If this is changing how you think about the mosquito plant aisle at the garden center, hit subscribe and the bell. Number 15 is the plant. The studies disproved 30 years ago, and it is still being sold under the same marketing claim. We are getting close. Number 8, peppermint. This is the only plant on the list that prevents the bite and treats the bite. Peppermint is itself an accident. Mentha piperita is a sterile hybrid between watermint and spearmint, first formally identified by the English naturalist John Ray in his Synopsis Methodica Stirpium Britannicarum in 1704. He had spotted it growing in a Hertfordshire field in 1696, recognized that it was something different from either parent, and the hybrid has been propagated by cuttings ever since. Every peppermint plant in cultivation today descends from those original English seedlings. The active compounds are menthol and menthone. Both disrupt insect nervous systems. Crush a handful of leaves and rub the oil on exposed skin, and you have a real, short-acting topical repellent. The plant in the ground does little passively, but the plant in your hands does a great deal. Here is the second use, and it is genuinely useful. If a mosquito gets through your defenses and bites you anyway, crushing a few peppermint leaves and rubbing them directly on the welt cools the skin within 30 seconds. The menthol reduces the histamine response. The itch fades faster. Offense and defense on the same plant, planted in containers. Peppermint spreads underground through aggressive rhizomes and will colonize any garden bed it is given access to. In a large pot beside the back door, it is perfectly behaved. Think of it as the plant that prevents the bite and treats the bite. The most useful plants are sometimes the ones that handle the problem and the consequence in the same leaf. Number 9. Lemon balm. This is a topical mosquito repellent that grows in a pot. Lemon balm contains citronella, the same compound that does the work in citronella grass, at lower concentration. Crush a handful of leaves between your palms. Rub the oil on exposed forearms and ankles, and you have a real natural repellent for 20 to 40 minutes. Published trials confirm the effect. The plant in a pot, untouched, does almost nothing. The plant in your hands does real work. Melissa officinalis has been cultivated in European monastery gardens since at least the 9th century. It appears in the plan of St. Gall, the Carolingian monastery garden, plan drawn around the year 820, where it was grown both for beekeeping and for what the monks called the comfort of the heart. The genus name Melissa comes from the Greek word for honeybee. The plant is one of the most cold-hardy on this list, thriving from zones 3 through 7, and it tolerates partial shade better than almost every other repellent plant. If your yard has a shady corner where lavender refuses to thrive, lemon balm is your answer. Grow it in containers. Lemon balm spreads by runners and self-seeding, and it will colonize a garden bed within 2 seasons if planted directly in the ground. Think of it as a topical repellent that lives in a pot beside the back door. The plants that work are usually the ones you have to actually touch. Lemon balm has been waiting 1,200 years for someone to crush it. Number 10. Lavender. This is the perimeter plant, not the centerpiece. Lavender does have mosquito repellent compounds. Linalool and linalool acetate are real. The studies are real, but the plant in a pot does little passively. The plant crushed and rubbed on skin works for 15 or 20 minutes. The plant's actual value as a mosquito repellent comes from a third option that almost nobody talks about: brushing. Plant lavender along every path, every patio edge, and every doorway in your yard. People walking past brush it. The brush releases the oil. The oil deters mosquitoes for a brief window in the immediate vicinity. The dog walks through it. Your kids walk through it. You walk through it 12 times a day. Each pass is a small burst of repellent oil released into the air around the spot you actually live in. Romans planted lavender across the empire from the 1st century onward. The name comes from lavar, the Latin word for to wash. Charlemagne required it across the Frankish Empire in the Capitulare de Villis in 795. Provence built an entire commercial economy around lavender distillation when the perfume industry settled in Grasse in the 18th century. The cultivars that matter for cold climates are Hidcote, hardy to minus 25 Celsius, and Munstead, more compact and earlier blooming. Both are English lavenders, Lavandula and Gustifolia. Think of it as a defensive perimeter that smells like Provence. The best perimeters in a garden are the ones nobody realizes are perimeters. They feel like landscape and work like a wall. Number 11. Bee balm. The active compound in this plant is the same one used in Listerine. Thymol has been the foundational antimicrobial in Listerine since 1904. It is also what gives bee balm its mosquito repellent effect. The volatile oils released from the foliage during warm summer afternoons contribute mildly, but genuinely, to mosquito repellents in the immediate vicinity of a planting. Bee balm earns its place on the list for a second reason that matters more than the mosquito story. It is one of the most pollinator-friendly native plants in North American horticulture. Hummingbirds seek it out specifically. Native bees depend on it. Butterflies visit it constantly. Monarda was named for Nicolas Monardes, a 16th century Spanish physician who documented New World plants from his clinic in Seville without ever leaving Spain. He published Historia Medicinal de las cosas que se traen de nuestras Indias Occidentales in 1565. The Oswego people of upstate New York used the leaves to make a tea long before European contact. Colonial Americans adopted the practice during the Boston Tea Party boycott of British tea in the 1770s. The drink is still called Oswego tea. The cultivars to plant are Jacob Klein, the most mildew-resistant red, and raspberry wine, deep magenta. Both hardy zones 3 through 9. Think of it as the plant that feeds the wildlife you want and discourages the one you do not. The most useful plants in a garden are usually the ones that earn their place twice. Bee balm earns its place 3 times. Number 12. Alliums. Garlic has been used as an insect repellent for over 4,000 years. The Ebers Papyrus, an Egyptian medical text from around 1550 before Christ, lists garlic among the plants used to drive away insects and treat insect bites. The same chemistry that made garlic useful then makes ornamental alliums useful now. The whole genus, garlic and onions, and leeks and chives, and the dramatic ornamental varieties, releases sulfur-based compounds, allicin, and various sulfoxides that mosquitoes and aphids and many beetle species find offensive. The repellent effect is real, but modest. The compounds release into the air around the planting in low concentration through the foliage. The stronger effect is on aphids and other soft-bodied pests in the soil and on neighboring plants. As a mosquito plant alone, allium is mid-tier. As a multi-purpose pest deterrent that also looks like a piece of avant-garde sculpture, it earns its place. Ornamental alliums entered Western horticulture from Central Asia in the late 1800s via Russian botanical expeditions. The bulbs are planted in autumn for spring and early summer blooms. The cultivars to plant are Globemaster, with 8-inch purple globes on 3-foot stems, Mount Everest in white, and Purple Sensation, the most reliable performer, all hardy zones, 4 through 9. Think of it as the plant that quietly contributes to your defense while pretending to be jewelry. The best plants in a garden are usually the ones that look like they are doing one thing while actually doing 2. Number 13. Marigolds. The marigolds at the garden center are not the marigolds with the strong insecticide reputation. The plants with the legitimate pyrethrin chemistry are Dalmatian chrysanthemums, Tanacetum cinerariifolium, first commercially extracted in the 1840s along the Dalmatian coast of present-day Croatia. The pyrethrin from those plants is the active ingredient in countless commercial insecticides, flea treatments, and lice shampoos sold today. The marigolds you actually buy at the garden center, French marigolds and African marigolds in the Tagetes genus, contain a different and milder set of compounds. They produce alpha-terthionyl in the roots, which suppresses soil nematodes, and modest amounts of volatile oils in the foliage that mildly deter mosquitoes and aphids when the plants are crushed or bruised. Tagetes was cultivated by the Aztecs at Tenochtitlan before Spanish contact, and used in Day of the Dead ceremonies, a tradition that continues across Mexico every November. Spanish colonists brought the plants to Europe in the 1500s. Plant marigolds for the right reasons. They bloom continuously from late spring to first frost. They cost almost nothing. They deter aphids on tomatoes and rabbits at vegetable garden edges. The mosquito effect is the bonus. Think of it as a beautiful flower with a small but honest pest control bonus. Most of the plants we grow for beauty are quietly working too. We just give the credit elsewhere. Number 14. Pitcher plants. This plant kills mosquitoes, one at a time. The internet acts like that solves the problem. Sarracenia species, native to the bogs and wetlands of the southeastern United States, form long tube-shaped leaves that look like upright trumpets. Insects are attracted by nectar at the lip, slip on the waxy interior, fall into a pool of digestive fluid at the base, and are slowly broken down and absorbed by the plant. It is ruthlessly efficient. It is also genuinely fascinating to watch. Here is the ecological honesty. Pitcher plant pools are also breeding habitat for at least 3 species of mosquito that have evolved to lay eggs only inside Sarracenia. Wiemia smithii is the most studied. The mosquito and the plant have coexisted for thousands of years. So while individual mosquitoes are killed, the picture is more complicated than the YouTube genre suggests. Sarracenia purpurea was the first carnivorous plant ever sent to Europe, taken from Newfoundland to France by the surgeon Michel Sarrazin in 1708. The genus carries his name. If you have a low wet spot in your yard, build a small bog garden. Use peat moss and perlite. Water with rainwater only. Set the plants in trays of standing water. Think of it as a plant that hunts mosquitoes one at a time, while you remain responsible for the rest. The most fascinating plants in a garden are not always the most useful. Sometimes they are just the ones we cannot stop watching. Number 15. Lemon-scented geranium. This is the most marketed mosquito plant in North America. It is also the one that does the least. Sold under names like Citrosa, Mosquito Shocker, and Citronella geranium, Pelargonium citrosum has been moving through garden centers since the early 1990s. The cultivar was patented in 1990 by a Dutch breeder named Dirk van Vliet, with a marketing claim built on a single anecdotal observation. The claim was never tested. In 1996, Dr. Arthur Tucker at Delaware State University tested it. He found no measurable effect on mosquito landing rates. The University of Guelph confirmed the result in 2002. A potted Citronella geranium and an empty pot performed identically in both trials. The plant smells like citronella because it contains trace amounts of citronellol in the leaves. Brush a leaf and rub the oil on your wrist, and you do get a brief topical effect. The plant in the pot, untouched, does nothing. This is the plant your local garden center is still selling this spring on a marketing claim that was disproven in 1996. Now you know what the studies actually found. Think of it as a beautiful plant with a marketing department that earned the wrong reputation. The most expensive plants in a garden are sometimes the ones we were told to want. 15 plants. Some are weapons, some are theater. The viewer who watched all the way to the end now knows which is which. Here is the truth no garden center wants on the tag. The single most effective thing you can do to reduce mosquitoes in your yard is not in this video. It is to eliminate standing water. Every saucer under every plant pot, every clogged gutter, every wheelbarrow left out in the rain. Mosquitoes breed in a bottle cap of still water. A neighbor's neglected bird bath will defeat every plant you have ever planted. Plant the rosemary, burn the sage, crush the lemon balm. Put a basil pot on the deck. Build a pitcher plant bog if you want to fascinate your friends. None of it will make your yard a mosquito-free fortress. Together, with the standing water gone, they will give you something more valuable than perfection. They will give you a summer evening you can actually sit through. Which one are you starting with? Drop it in the comments. Subscribe for the rest. The garden was never meant to be perfect. It was meant to be a place you could stay in until the light went.